right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale, and joining me as always is mi amigo, Mr. Kyle Filson.
How's it going out there?
Oh, man. Kyle, did you watch the fights?
I did. I just got done watching them, actually,
Did you
about
like
20
it?
minutes before this. Yes. Yeah, they were good.
They were really good
I'm liking
fights.
the fact that they're putting more and more of them on mainstream television versus
Yeah.
pay-per-view. I mean, in the beginning, it was like 4 fights a year, and now it seems like they're doing them almost every 2 months.
Well, it feels like it's not even that. It's like every couple of weeks. Like there's one tonight. Well, then next weekend's going to be some prelims, and then it's
Yeah.
going to be the pay-per-view and all that. But yeah, I'm a big fan.
I like it because I'm a big fan of it, and I mean, for a long time, I was always paying for all the pay-per-view fights.
Yeah.
And now it's like I get a lot more for free.
And
So,
I'll still pay for some, but I mean, after
Absolutely.
a while, you get a lot of money tied up in the fight.
Yeah, you think they would start out like an on-demand thing or something. I mean, I know they have their channel, but I mean, you think they'd have a program where you could pay a large sum up front and then
Like the NFL Network or something.
yeah,
Don't
and
they
then
do
you
that?
could get all of them free. Like if you just put up, I don't know, $500, and then you get all the pay-per-views for the year.
What do they? Yeah, it's something like that they do. I think I've seen on one of the Dish Network things or something. Or
Well, I know they have the UFC channel, but does that give you every pay-per-view?
no, I don't believe it does. I think it's all. What is that thing called? The Fight Pass. But I still don't think that gives you all of them.
No,
think
I
it's got
just think that
something
gives you
different.
a lot of the like countdowns and things like that.
Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't. But
I'm talking about something that you paid for, and you get a discounted price on all the fights for the year.
Because that's like saying I'm buying them all up front.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got you. That would be pretty handy. Yeah, I enjoyed the fights, man.
You
I
know,
thought
like
they
a
were
discount.
great.
If you're going to buy the year's worth,
Yeah.
you're only paying $20 a fight versus the normal $50 or $60.
Yeah, exactly.
And then what I don't get is some of the fights will be $45, and then I'll get some and they'll be $65. I'm like, wait a minute. I know I just bought the last fight for $45. Why is this one $65?
I think they. I
Is
think
it based on the opponent?
No, I think it's gone up now, and it's like a set like $60 or $65. Of course, I always buy it in HD because normal
do too.
TV hurts my eyes.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't know. If
And
it's
I
real.
mean, if I'm going to buy an HD television and pay for HD cable, I mean,
Why don't I have HD? I want to watch everything in HD.
yeah, exactly.
Makes my eyes hurt if it's just fuzzy, and that's another
Once
thing.
you
that
get
makes
used
me
to it in
laugh.
high definition, it's hard to go back. I
That
mean,
is
like if
true.
you're normally just used to it, it's not a big deal. But once you get used to it in HD, man, it's hard to go back.
Yeah, that is for sure. Man, we have been snowed under with work.
We've
That's
been
getting
doing
crazy.
a ton of interviews.
And we got a bunch more like emails. I've got a bunch of emails right now I got to get back with everybody with.
Yeah, we've been getting overwhelmed.
And and I like it.
But I like it too.
Yeah.
That means
I'm-
that people are paying attention.
Yeah, and I like it. But it's been fun so far. But yeah, we got some stuff coming up. In fact, guys, I just talked to a man on the thylacine. We were talking about wanting to get one. Well, we got one. I've got the
Awesome.
emails back.
I'm so happy about that because I'd love to talk about the thylacine
Yeah.
because this is a cryptid that I don't really think is extinct.
Well, I think this guy's got some pretty good information on it. So it's going to be a really interesting interview because, I mean, we're talking like fresh. Like we're talking, him and his group have been in the field. It's going to be he's an Australian man, and it's going to be
It's summertime there.
Yeah, and they've been in the field studying it. So, I mean, we're going to listen to, when we interview him, it's going to be the freshest that you can get of them just out of the bush, just now talking about what they found.
Man. What's this group called?
It's TRU, TRU, and it stands for the Thylacine Research Unit.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That's what we're going to talk to. Yeah, so it worked out. It's going to be greatness. I'm really excited.
I can't wait
Super
for that.
duper excited. You know what else I'm excited about?
What's that?
The Weird Text Fest down there in Glen Rose.
Oh man, that's
they've
coming
got a
up.
bunch of people added to it now, and it's going to be, and we're going to have some fun with everybody.
I saw some steampunk and burlesque shows are going
Something's
down.
gonna- yeah.
Some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Along
It's
with
gonna be
all
good
the award-winning speakers that are going to be there, like Nick Redfern and
Ken's
Rita
gonna be there, and
Louise
Lyle.
Ken Gerhard, Lyle
Yeah.
Blackburn. Yeah,
They're having a few psychics. I think they're going to do some psychic readings down there. I've never, I'd like to talk to some of these people because I don't have any idea. And I think the North Texas, what is it called, Paranormal Group or Paranormal Research or something like that.
they're
It's
doing
gonna
some
be.
kind of ghost find or something. You can go along with them to some hotel or something. You can do some kind of ghost searching.
They're going to be down there and talk
I'm not
to everybody.
interested in that though.
You remember the date?
Yeah, it's like well, no, not exactly. I think it's like March 21st.
I think you're right. I think it's Friday, Saturday, and half a day Sunday or something. We'll get it narrowed down, and I'm going to make sure to tell everybody because we'd love to have a bunch of folks come out. We're going to be down
I
there
got it up
kicking
on our
around.
website.
Yeah, there you go. Go to the website, check the link. Yeah, if you can, if you're in Texas or
Well, a
if
lot
you're
of
close.
our fans aren't around here. I mean,
Yeah.
the UK especially. I mean, like tonight's guest is from the UK, and we're huge fans of the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, and Gerrard Williams, I mean, he's from the UK. Of course, he lives in France now, but
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
an amazing guest.
Well, I can give you a rundown about him, but first, we had a man post something on our Facebook page, and his name is Michael Patrick McAvoy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And he's a new friend of ours now, and all the rest of our friends. I've been getting some other Facebook friend requests from some of our other listeners. Jesse and all those guys have been sending me some Facebook friend requests, so I got me some new friends all around now. So I just have to say, what's up, guys? Thanks for following along. Thanks for playing along. Keep sending them. Get everybody else. We'll be friends with anybody.
Tell your friends, man.
I'm a baby shaker and a hand kisser, or is that backwards? Is that supposed to be? Yeah, something like that. One of the two. Yeah, okay. Back to the whole thing about Gerrard Williams. We're going to be talking to the man. He co-authored this book with a man named Simon Dunstan. Mm-hmm. And the name of the book is Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler.
I read this book about a year and a half ago, and it totally blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a rundown of how much went into it. Is Simon Dunstan is like he's an author, a filmmaker, photographer. He's like a master of all that's the military history is what he's done. He's written over 50 books, and he's also made multiple documentaries written and directed for the History Channel. So Simon's not a joke. And then Gerrard has spent over 30 years of his life in journalism in multiple countries.
Yes.
And we're talking like he's worked at Sky News. He's worked for the BBC.
Reuters.
He's been the deputy editor for Reuters. Is it Reuters? Reuters? I don't know how to pronounce it.
I don't know.
But I know it's a big bunch. It's a big thing. So we're talking to some guys. It's got a lot of background in this.
Way above our pay grade.
Way above. Gerrard's even been in combat, doing combat correspondence, like flak jackets and helmets and shit like that on. So, it's like real. So, you're talking to some guys that have really been in the mix. So, it's going to be, they do their research. They do their backup and their fact finding.
It's specifically about the escape of Adolf Hitler.
Yep.
I was always taught that Adolf Hitler committed suicide at the end of World War II.
Yeah,
apparently that's not so.
That's not so. I don't want to give away any more of it. I want y'all to listen to this. We'll catch y'all after the whole interview. I think you're going to enjoy it. Kyle and I have talked about this book between ourselves for quite some time and looked into more stuff because of this book. So if you're a history nut like we are, or if you enjoy any kind of conspiracy, because there's a lot of conspiracy wrapped up in this too, I think you're really going to enjoy this. So stick around. You're going to love this interview. Y'all take care. You listen to Expanded Perspectives. And here we are on Expanded Perspectives with our guest, Mr. Gerrard Williams. How are you doing, Gerrard?
I'm good, thank you.
And he has written, along with Simon Dunstan, an incredible book called Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler. And it's an incredible book. My favorite thing is, when we were in school, we were taught how the war ended, World War II, and that Adolf Hitler, I've heard, shot himself with a gun and had a cyanide capsule in his mouth at the same time. You hear various stories, and Eva Braun ingested cyanide, and that was, but I guess the Soviets were the first ones to jump up on the bunker like that and find it there when Berlin fell. And through Gerrard's work, we find that that's not really the case. Now, Gerrard, what got you interested in this whole, the end of World War II and Adolf Hitler and this possible escape?
I've been a journalist since I was 18. I've worked for Reuters, the BBC, Sky News, lots of people over the years, and been to 40-something countries, covered Bosnia, Rwanda, twice in Iraq. And And I got tired of being a hard news journalist, got a bit old for it, I felt, and it was beginning to feel like the same material, different country, different day. So, along with a good friend of mine, we decided we'd do long-form documentaries. We traveled a bit to countries that we knew, places like Kenya and Albania, and then we'd neither of us been to South America. So we thought we'd go to Argentina because it started with A. Went to Argentina, did a bunch of documentaries on various things, and then came across this story that Adolf Hitler had escaped on a submarine to Argentina at the end of the war and had died there 17 years later. And at first I thought, I've never done a conspiracy theory documentary. I've never done a silly film. It's always been hard news, investigative journalism, all that sort of stuff. And I thought, I'm taking a break out of my news career and I'm going to do a half-hour silly film about Hitler escaping to Argentina. And that's where the problem started. I started to look at the story, and instead of just accepting what's been written in the history books, went back and looked at contemporaneous reporting from the BBC, from the AP, from Reuters, from United Press International, and it all started to tell a very different story to the one that I'd been brought up with and the one that I'd been taught. Stalin thought Hitler had escaped from the bunker. Zhukov, who was the commanding general in charge of Soviet forces in Berlin at the fall, he also said he'd escaped and that he'd had an airfield that he could use, even if it was a temporary airfield. Eisenhower said they had no proof that Adolf Hitler was dead. He was still saying it in the 50s. And one of the things that really did it for me was a BBC report from a man called Thomas Cadet, which I'll send to you guys so you can play it at this place.
Okay.
Which he describes the discovery of a body in the bunker complex at the end of the war, which the Russians say is a bad double of Adolf Hitler. And here you can hear Cadet saying it himself.
Outside the front door of the shelter are the 5 perforated petrol tins that were believed to have been used for scattering petrol on the body of Hitler and of burning it. But there, at any rate, my Soviet friends found no trace of Hitler himself. But there was the body of Goebbels, shot outside the entrance to the shelter. And walking back across the garden and round the ornate lily pond that lies in the middle of it, we came to a spot at the foot of some wooden steps that lead up into this room. They're just 10 feet from me there by the window as I stand. There, at the bottom of those steps, they found the half-burned body of a man with a lock of black hair on the right-hand side of his face and a little black moustache. And they looked at him more closely, and their doctors came to the conclusion that it was what they call a bad double of Hitler and not Hitler himself. If that is so, then all trace of him has disappeared, and only is left behind this indescribable confusion of smashed woodwork, of bullet holes, of shell holes, of dust and rubble and filth, and standing in it these grave, solemn, motionless Soviet officers and guards who now stand guard in this building, which was both the beginning and the end of National Socialism.
Now, Cadet was a serious BBC reporter, embedded, they'd call it nowadays, with the Soviet troops when they got to the bunker. And his reporting of the situation on the ground is very different to the reporting, well, so-called reporting, that we've been force-fed throughout history.
Yeah, it really does seem like it was pretty unclear, where when I was taught in school, it was like they knew exactly what happened. You know, that's what I was taught.
Well, I agree. What I learned in school, it almost seemed like it was, it wasn't until later that they actually talked about the Russians being the ones that found it. It almost felt like the way America puts their spin on it, that we got over there and we are the ones that found them.
We won the war, we destroyed the
war.
Nazis and all that.
Yeah, and then you...
Yeah, there's one hell of a backstory to America's involvement in World War II. I'm very glad you came, obviously a bit late, but I'm very glad you came. But for me, there are two Americas. There is the America that I've always wanted to believe in, which is the land of the free, the democracy, all the good stuff, which is good. And then there's sort of a second America, which is your corporate businesses, your corporate lawyers, your banks.
Right.
All of them supported the Nazis to a huge extent before World War II, and quite a lot of it throughout World War II, which is even more scary. People like the Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford, is lauded as a great American hero. Well, he wasn't. He was an anti-Semitic animal who Hitler gave the highest civilian rank decoration in the Nazi Party to in the 1930s. Ford made over 30% of the vehicles that were used by the Nazi war machine during World War II. IBM micromanaged the Holocaust. They had IBM employees at Dachau and Buchenwald and Auschwitz, counting the numbers of people they could kill in a day.
That's incredible.
Chase Manhattan Bank was heavily involved in financing the Nazis. A man called Alan Dulles, who I'm sure you all know, and his brother, was central to all this. They did the negotiations. They were friends with Martin Bormann. It just goes on and on, the amount of corporate involvement in Nazi Germany.
Yeah, and until this
isn't
book...
just Nazi Germany before we started, they were horrible. This is afterwards as well.
I had no idea of the Ford Motor Company and IBM and ITT and all these other American corporations that were involved in that. I've never heard of that until your book. It's fascinating.
ITT owned a huge chunk of the Fokker-Wulf Company, which were producing the fighter planes that were knocking American bombers out of the sky during World War II. So somehow ITT, one of the great American companies, was actively helping German boys kill American boys, which is nice.
Insane.
It's disgusted me. Our own government and the Bank of England don't fare terribly well. Not the government of the time under Churchill, but the aristocracy and the banking operations in Britain were just as careless with our boys' lives with the help that they gave to Nazi Germany.
Gerrard, do you think, real quick on your opinion, do you believe that maybe, was it what we refer to as the military-industrial complex, do you believe they were aware of Adolf's escape?
I think it's Eisenhower in his last address to the nation as president talks about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. Now, that's not long after the war. And, of course, J.F. Kennedy hated them and hated the CIA as well. And the CIA seemed to be the representatives of that military-industrial complex, which is what I would refer to as America, too. It's not the America I would like to believe in, but it's the America that, makes billions of dollars out of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And as such, there is this America, too. And it's a very real and very scary thing.
Do you think at the time that they were aware of the escape of Adolf Hitler, or do you believe it was kind of a backdoor deal done by just a few people?
I don't think that. I don't think your president knew, and I don't think the people in politics knew. But I think there are a hell of a lot of other people who knew. Alan Dulles is central to it, and his sister Eleanor, after the war, was central to continuing operations with the Nazis. Also, a very nasty man called John J. McCloy, who was pretty much the governor of Germany after the war and stopped the denazification program and released all the industrialists and everything else. I think there would have been a key number of people who knew that Hitler had escaped. And one of them, funnily enough, on what I would refer to the good guys' side, was probably Hoover of the FBI. He constantly investigated, although it was outside the FBI's parameters, really, post-war. He constantly investigated every single rumor from Argentina. We have some of the declassified files, which some are useless, some are interesting, some have led us into other areas of investigation. But I'm pretty sure that Hoover knew, and he wanted to prove it, but he was stopped at every corner.
So it was probably done like a plausible deniability, where if the president and some of his men didn't know that they weren't lying, they couldn't be called out on any of that, they just weren't told the whole story.
Yeah, I think that even if they did know the whole story, it would be so shocking to the American public post-war that it wouldn't have done anybody any good, anybody in power any good anyway. And the whole idea that, great names in American business and in American banking had been heavily involved with the Nazi Party before the war and during, and the Nazis after the war as well. We mustn't forget that. They went on. If that had become public knowledge, how would all those people who had boys fighting in Europe in World War II have felt? I don't think it would have... It would have been good for social peace in America.
Yeah, for the years that war went on.
Yeah, it was... I think it was such a big lie, and it's continued to be told as such a big lie, that it's become the truth, in inverted commas. I can't remember whether it's Goebbels or Hitler who said if you tell a lie often enough and loud enough, it does become the truth. And this has become the accepted truth. And it has enabled a great many people within America and within Germany, we mustn't forget that, to not be criminalized, not to be done for their crimes, and to get away and live really nice, wealthy lifestyles on the back of what was pretty much a disgusting criminal party in the Nazis, and then a disgusting war that happened because of them.
Yeah, man. And now it seems, I like in the book how you talk about how all the underlings jostling for position to be Hitler's number 2 guy, like Bormann and Goebbels and Goering and stuff like that. It really did seem like Hitler had it set up so that no one would have too much power, and he liked it that way. And then also how it was mismanaged.
Yeah, I think that's very true. But the one man who had the real power was Martin Bormann. If you wanted to get to Hitler, you went through the secretary of the party, and he held the most important position in Germany after Adolf Hitler. It's always been something, again, that's sort of been airbrushed out of history. People talk about Goering and Goebbels and, even Speer. But if you wanted to see Hitler, you went through Bormann, and Bormann was very careful in how he managed that. And he was the man who controlled the operation, the apparatus and the operation of the party. Well, party and military and state are pretty inseparable in Nazi Germany. So the Brown Eminence, as he became known, was seriously the key man in Nazi Germany after Adolf Hitler.
Mm. Now, how long ago before the escape do you think Bormann knew that they weren't militarily going to win this war and started setting up the pieces to eventually move to Argentina? How much earlier than the escape do you think that was taking place?
I think Bormann was a realist, and probably after Stalingrad and the Battle at Kursk, he realized that they didn't stand a chance. There was definitely going to be a second front opened up in Europe by the Allies, and I think I'm not going to put myself in the mind of this man, but what appears to be happening at that time is he realizes that Germany cannot survive, that the Russians, no matter how many men they throw at the Russians will always have more. And they're the real problem, not the Allies so much, but the Russians are the real problem. They're the people who win World War II militarily.
That's who put the stop on them, yeah.
Yeah, completely. And stomped them into the ground. So I think 43, 44, Bormann started to actively move material and wealth by money transfer, quite simple to do even in those days, out to Argentina and Brazil, although the Brazil operation got closed down quite quickly. But even before that, Germany had such a large presence in Argentina, and I mean, still holds the largest embassy outside. The largest German embassy internationally is in Buenos Aires, not Washington. And they were very responsible for the generals coming into power. Eva Perón and Juan Perón were both agents of the Nazi Abwehr, their secret intelligence service, from 1940 on. So there'd been a lot of money put in there. Argentina was the only country in the world to have its own Nazi party apart from Germany. There were other fascist parties in Europe, obviously, but Argentina had its own Nazi party. And they had, well, at one stage I have a film of 30,000 of them attending a rally in Luna Park in Buenos Aires. But at one stage they had about 230,000 members. That's card-carrying, signed-up members of the Nazi party in Argentina. And then a lot of sympathizers outside. Argentina has a very large German population.
Wow. And you detail how Martin Bormann began to set up all these corporations in Argentina, like 700 different corporations or something they were setting up there.
Gerrard,
at least 700 false companies around the world where they were able to move money, people, patents, scientific knowledge. All of this material was moved out of Nazi Germany towards the end of the war. But I mean, it wasn't just Bormann doing this. I mean, there were companies like Siemens. Siemens had been described by British military intelligence before the war as basically the SS's international operation. And Siemens set up 400 front companies around the world, so they could move their material out. Siemens is still one of the biggest companies in the world. I'm not sure what impact they have in America, but they have a huge impact in Europe.
Gerrard, before reading your book, I had, everyone knows a lot of the German names of Bormann and like Hausset of Goebbels and all that. I had no idea that Bormann was such a genius at not only marketing Adolf Hitler, but collecting money from it, the stamps, the things. It was unbelievable the amount of money that man knew how to market, kind of like the way sports figures are done these days. Back then, it was ridiculous.
It's sort of the first brand management exercise.
Yeah.
Hitler was a brand. The Nazi Party was a brand, and as you mentioned, I mean, a portion of every stamp sold with the Führer's face on it, every postcard, every copy of Mein Kampf, all went into his purse. Not Martin Bormann, Adolf Hitler's personal bank account. This guy was seriously wealthy by the end of the war, but didn't have as much control of the real wealth of Germany as Martin Bormann did, and managed to get out of Europe at the end of the war. He also managed to get most of it back into Germany. World War II. Anybody who tells you there was a West German economic miracle is a fool and a bit of a liar, because the only miracle was that they managed to bring the capital they'd taken out of the country back into Germany at the end of, following World War II, and were able to build the economic powerhouse that Germany is today. Thank God it's not Nazi.
Yeah, and Kyle and I was discussing that before the interview. We were so surprised it was how fast after the war Germany bounced back. I mean, it was just almost unbelievable, because after you see the way other countries, after major wars on their lands, take sometimes decades to come back from, it seems like Germany did it in under 5 years. It just seems like they went from nothing, being a dominated country, to one of the best, and still one of the best when it comes to attention to detail and fine craftsmanship. Definitely. They're known for that.
You have to remember that Hugo Boss, which I take it is a big name in fashion in the US as well, designed and made all the SS uniforms.
Yeah. Their uniforms were pretty sharp, though, I have to admit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be, mass murdering criminal swine,
you might as well look good.
Yeah, quite.
I was shocked. I think I read in the book that something like 30,000 Nazis immigrated to Argentina from that area.
We now think that is a massively under calculation.
Wow.
Of who actually got out.
Under
calculation. Our research now looks like over 100,000 of them got out.
Oh, wow. So they just went down there and changed clothes and came back.
Well, some of them did just go back to Germany as well, because when they realized that nobody was hunting them, that they just thought, well, we'll go back. And there are so many examples of senior SS generals and everything else not being prosecuted post-war that it's quite scary.
Right, and that's what's so boggling. I mean, a mass exodus like that. How were people not aware of that? I mean, certainly they would notice.
People were aware of it. And you can't put 100,000 men, most of them through the Vatican, on International Committee for the Red Cross travel documents or Vatican travel documents in a 3-year period between 1945 and 1948 without people noticing. Someone
would take notice to that.
Yeah, and you've got to get them down the rat lines, through Austria. You've got to get them down through Italy. They've all got to have ID cards that they can show people. And somebody's got to be waiting for them with funds and tickets. And then somebody's got to be waiting for them on the other side with a network of operations to enable them to survive.
It's funny how Kyle and I came upon your book, because even beforehand, him and I had always discussed, it was funny how Werner von Braun had been so big in Germany, and there were photographs of him in the Nazi uniform, and then it seemed just like a few years later, he's standing next to guys in NASA helping us develop rockets. And we're like, something's not right about that. I'm not a genius, but something doesn't match up right here of how he got from there to here, and there was no problem with it.
I'm pretty disgusted with NASA. They did a film a couple of years ago, an animated film about what it would be like for them to go to other galaxies and to explore the outer regions of space. And the name of the ship was the Werner von Braun. Werner von Braun was responsible for the deaths of close on 50,000 slave workers in factories in Germany, responsible for the deaths of over 5,000 British civilians with the V1 and V2 rocket raids against London and the southeast. This man was a colonel in the SS. He didn't give a damn about anything apart from his rockets. And at the end of the war, he and the whole of his operation, as part of Project Paperclip, were taken by the Americans. And again, it's America too I'm talking about here.
Sure.
Taken by the Americans to work for NASA. Now, Truman, after the war, said that nobody who'd been a Nazi Party member would ever be allowed into the United States or would ever work with the American government. By about 1947, there's about 15,000, maybe 20,000 Nazis on the payroll, and that's in America itself. These aren't just the ones who escaped down to Argentina. So the idea that Werner von Braun is being lauded as the man who put America on the moon, effectively, and they're going to name a ship after him that will be the first contact with potentially other civilizations.
Oh, man.
The universe, I think somebody needs to have a quiet word with NASA or a very loud word with NASA. For me, it's a bit like, getting the man who planned 9/11 and putting him in charge of American airspace.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and it wasn't that long ago.
No, it's not that long ago. I was born in '59, so it's a bit late, but it's within my father. Well, my father was a World War II soldier anyway, but
right.
It's within living memory.
I feel somewhat ashamed of even,
and yet it's all been quite.
I mean, I really do. I feel a sense of shame of even knowing that that's going on. I don't know why.
Well, it's
so
almost
strange.
like at the end of the war that the Americans made a deal. They turned their cheek the other way. They let Hitler and some of his head higher ups leave. They took the scientists that they needed to influence their rocket program, and poor Britain was so beat up that they just wanted the war to end, and that's just kind of where it was left, and no one really looked into it.
Yeah, and there were other things to look at. I mean, we have to try and. Although I'm much more disgusted and ashamed than you guys are, because having done the research, not able to put everything in the book, it's changed my world completely and my view of the world completely. But we have to realize that at the time, atomics had just started. You dropped 2, the only country ever to do it, but you dropped 2 on Japan, probably for good reasons. The Russians were beginning to test atomics. They were after the German atomic scientists as much as you were, and us. We also, tested atomics all over the world. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I mean, that's something that's been said for thousands of years. And suddenly, the US needed Germany, needed Germans, and needed them on our side, because the bigger threat was the Russians. And for some people like Alan Dulles and Ford and Chase Manhattan and everything else, the real threat all the time had been the Russians, communism, godless communism. And one of the reasons for the Vatican helping all these Nazi murderers get out of Germany to Latin America at the end of the war is because they saw them as some sort of Teutonic knights who believed in Christ, who were fighting these godless communists. So we have to try and think of how people were thinking at that time. I don't think it gets them off the hook in any way, but we do have to think about realpolitik at the same time. But realpolitik is often used to cover up the foulest of crimes.
And Gerrard, you've been in journalism for the number of years that you have. You know that they can put a certain spin on certain stories, and you know that without the freedom of information that we have today, back then it would have been easy to spoon feed the rest of the peoples over here, especially whatever they really wanted them to know, without really telling them the whole story.
I think that's true. I mean, I must admit, in the 25 odd years I was a operational international journalist, I've never seen any example of conspiracy being operated, or I've never seen any example of a government putting a massive spin on something. I was very lucky in that I worked for agencies most of my life, and then for the British Broadcasting Corporation, which, although recently I think has become a lot more politically influenced, wasn't when I was there. But yes, it would have been easy because people like to believe their political sources, and they like to believe their administrations. They don't think that these guys are going to do anything terribly wrong. In recent history in the United States and in Great Britain, the United States, let's take Mr. Kissinger and the bombings in Cambodia and Laos, and then Kissinger supporting all the fascist dictatorships in Latin America, including the one in Argentina, which murdered 30,000 of its own people. With America too support, and in Britain we had a thing called the Bloody Sunday Massacre, where a number of people were shot dead by our paratroopers in Londonderry, and at the time they were all said to be terrorists. But after 40 odd years, people have looked at the story and they were actually all civilians, and none of them were armed. But it's taken 40 odd years for that to come out.
It does. It's shocking, and it makes me mad when I hear that this is the real story. This is what really happened. It's just another example of not being told the truth, just like, I'm embarrassed to say my country's done before. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, Jessica Lynch, Pat Tillman, weapons of mass destruction. There's just numerous tales that when it comes out, it's just not true.
Once they realized they could get away with it the first time,
yeah,
it's like anything else. You're like, oh, I did it the first time. I think I can do it again.
Yeah, and very often I don't think that your presidents or Congress know anything about it until it's too late. until it's a fait accompli. Please don't get me wrong, Carl and Cam. I think America's a wonderful place. I've got lots of American friends. And, you know, in comparison to what the British Empire did over the years, America is pretty amateurish in some ways. So this isn't an anti-American rant at all.
No.
Well, you're not making any claims. You're talking about history.
Yeah,
that's all. That's all we're discussing real things that happen in history. If people don't believe it, you can go on the internet and search up, and you can see Werner von Braun and guys drinking coffee with their arms around him at NASA laughing, and you know what he's done. It'd be like putting Charles Manson in charge of a daycare.
Yes, well, and you know, but for whatever reasons it was done, it did give America a space program. So, but I simply cannot believe that the means justify the ends. You know, I simply can't.
No, I'm with you.
It's my mother would kill me.
Well, let's get into the actual escape. Let's get into Operation Fuhrland or Eagle Flight.
Well, for what people don't know, I do believe it took place, allegedly, that Hitler was found dead in the bunker on April 30th of 45. Is that correct, Gerrard?
That's what we've been told.
That's what we've been told. And it wasn't but like a few days before that, maybe 10 or so, that they actually celebrated his birthday.
Yeah, the Fuhrer's birthday is on April 20th, if I remember rightly.
So right in that area. So it's around, he had a big birthday party and all that stuff. Now, at that point, at the alleged celebration of his birthday, there's more than likely a chance he wasn't even in Germany then.
Well, no, our information shows that he was, because he was flown out by a pilot called Captain Peter Baumgart on the night of the 28th. So
that was his birthday present.
Well, I think Bormann had been trying to persuade him to get out earlier because he wanted to go, and so did Gestapo Muller. But Hitler, for whatever reason, would not listen to Bormann getting him out, because there would have been times when it was much, much easier to leave Berlin than on the 28th. I think Bormann wanted Hitler to get out earlier, and there were opportunities for him to get out earlier. I mean, we know they were still using the doubles in Berlin for public appearances as late as March 20th, 1945. The last pictures of Hitler, which I think most people have seen if they've ever watched a History Channel documentary, of him handing out medals to members of the Hitler Youth who'd been tank busting, blowing up tanks with Panzerfaust in the siege of Berlin. History says that those pictures were taken on April the 20th, but they weren't. They were taken on March the 20th and appeared in the last ever copy of the Hitler Youth magazine, and dated March the 20th. We had those pictures looked at by an expert in London who works with the Metropolitan Police very closely on facial recognition, mainly in terrorist cases. And he stated categorically that the man in the pictures, the man handing out the medals, who's meant to be Adolf Hitler, is definitely not Adolf Hitler. We also know from British intelligence reports that there was a double who was active at Berchtesgaden at the Eagle's Nest. I mean, when I look at these pictures of the real Hitler and the false Hitler, it becomes even more obvious to me that it's not the real Hitler handing out the medals. But it does seem to be the real Hitler in the bunker until the 28th, 29th. When he leaves the bunker, goes into the Chancellery, to his private quarters in the Chancellery, or what's left of them, and goes through a false door, down into a tunnel, into a bunker, and from that bunker there's another tunnel into the underground system in Berlin, and they walk a number of miles to a landing ground where there's a Ju-52 captained by Captain Peter Baumgart, waiting to fly them out to Denmark. Now, all this is reported at the time. It's in Time magazine. It's from an interview with a Russian major called Major Nikitin, who's with the NKVD as they take the bunker in Berlin. The pilot, his statements are reported by the BBC, by Reuters, by AP, when he's put on trial in Warsaw in 1947. Interestingly, we thought the pilot had disappeared when he was later released from Polish prison, but he wasn't. He was picked up by the American government and flown to Washington, and then he disappears for the moment. However, we will track him and find out where he went. Now, all this stuff is out there. All this stuff is available. And yet, we're told that Hitler, despite there being no evidence whatsoever, killed himself and his girlfriend suicided at the same time in the bunker on April the 30th. I don't get it. I simply don't get it. And this isn't like, the grassy knoll or the JFK thing, which is or isn't straightforward. I don't know. I haven't looked into it.
Yeah, well, who was it that made the actual claim, that he committed suicide by putting a gun in his mouth and Eva Braun bit down on a cyanide capsule? Was it the Russians or who was the one that...
No, I think that everybody who'd been in the bunker knew that story in one form or another. And I think it's blindingly obvious that Martin Bormann and Gestapo Muller, the head of the head of SS and Gestapo at the time, actually put this story around. What do? You want you want an end to a story. You say he's dead.
So he started the disinformation, and it just spread through everyone.
Yeah, Bormann and Muller started the disinformation. Neither Bormann or Muller's bodies have ever been found. And I know that Muller and Bormann were both in Argentina after the war, and that's from Nazi sources, which are published Nazi sources, actually. So they both escaped to join their Führer in Argentina later.
But they did find two bodies, right, in the bunker?
No, there's no. Again, this is one of the most irritating things in history. The whole of the Goebbels family committed suicide in the bunker. That's Magda and Joseph, and they murdered their children before they committed suicide. The Russians have wonderful black and white film. It's wonderful is the wrong word, of these poor children's corpses and the partly burnt bodies of Magda and Joseph Goebbels, although both are completely recognizable. So they have all those pictures. There are no pictures of the two bodies, allegedly Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler. There is one set of pictures of a body meant to be Adolf Hitler, which the Russians later described, and Thomas Cadet of the BBC goes on to report, was a bad copy, a bad double. In fact, the Russians have been given a number of bad doubles of Hitler when they got to the bunker area. One they dismissed because he had darned socks. Socks had been repaired, and they thought, well, the leader of the Nazi party wouldn't be wearing repaired socks. So they dismissed that body out of hand.
Jeez. Okay, George, so we get them, they left the bunker, they got down in the tunnels, they got on this plane, the plane takes off. Where do they first land?
Denmark.
Denmark?
Yeah, they landed at what is the former Imperial Zeppelin base at Tonda in Denmark. Denmark is still in Nazi hands. There are lots of German troops around. And from there they take off and they fly to pick up a much larger aircraft capable of much longer distances, which is the Ju-252. They fly that down to Spain, where they're met by friends from the Franco government. You have to remember that Spain was a fascist country long before Nazi Germany was. And from there, they're flown to the island of Fuerteventura, where for 4 years the Nazis have been building a bolt hole and an airfield. And from that place in Fuerteventura, from the villa there, they joined 3 submarines, and 53 days underwater, they traveled to the coast of Argentina, where they met by other friends.
53 days underwater. I hope it was a real son of a bitch for him this whole time.
Yeah, so do I.
I mean, they had to have known that someone in our government, I would believe had to have known that something like that was going on. As much activity as they had in that whole area.
Alan Dulles of the CIA.
They had to have.
I'm not sure, but I have a sneaky feeling, and I don't really want to darken the man's record, but I'm pretty sure that Wild Bill Donovan knew something was going on, the general in charge of OSS at the time. But it's the Dulles brothers, especially the one in Switzerland, who knew it was going on, and they just made sure that people were looking in different directions.
Just a little sleight of hand. Look over here, and
to me, it's the greatest sleight of hand in history.
What Kyle and I got really caught up in after reading your book is we started going online and looking at a lot of the architecture in Argentina and was blown away at some of the stuff that is
Bavarian.
It looks like you've taken parts of Germany and stuck it down there.
The whole area around San Carlos de Bariloche, I mean, I've woken up there a number of times, gone out for coffee and thought, hang on, where am I? I'm in Argentina. Now I go, how far are we from Salzburg? It's incredible. They transported the whole world there. I mean, Bavarian-type chalets and chocolatiers and beer and German food. I happened to be there for Hitler's birthday. It seemed to be a sensible place to be back when we were researching this story. And the town was full of old Germans. You could hear them singing "We're Sailing Towards England," the U-boat song, in the cafes and the bars.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
The son of the Gauleiter of Hamburg. I think the story's in the book. And he said to me, he said, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do a bad German accent. He said, when Hitler came to Hamburg, he always stayed with us.
And they were proud of the fact. They just loved it.
Well, yeah. I mean, especially the ones who got away.
Kyle and I are here in Texas, and there are some large areas of towns here through Texas that have a lot of German heritage, and they still have some German architecture. And that's what we were laughing about is, we've seen it. We've been to these little towns and the little German fests they have around here, and they're all built with all the German architecture. And then we pulled it up in Argentina, and it's as strange as seeing it in Texas as it is as seeing it in Argentina. You're just like, I can't imagine how that got there until, of course, reading your book. And then you read the whole book, and you're like, oh, it makes perfect sense. They've been paying, sending money down there, and they had the people build it. I mean, you think about an Argentine economic system with the workers and the construction men down there. I mean, they got paid very well to build all of these things. So, I mean, they were open arms to be like, they could charge whatever. These guys had to have it done.
Yeah, and the Nazis had millions to spend on it as well. I mean, it was... I was trying to think, if Britain had lost the war, where would the royal family have gone, or Churchill? I mean, some of the royal family probably stayed. But Churchill, where would he have gone? He'd have disappeared into Canada or New Zealand or Australia, and maybe the US. But, if he was trying to hide, he'd have disappeared into somewhere where everybody spoke the language, that people were still massively supportive of what he tried to do during World War II. And that's what the Nazis, when they got to Argentina, had. They had a big German population. They could hide amongst it. They spoke the language. And it was a lot like going home for many of them. I mean, Argentina isn't, like Brazil, it's not all jungles and everything. It actually now one of my favorite countries in the world. Buenos Aires is a beautiful city. The area around Bariloche is quite beautiful, if you can ignore the Germanic side of things. And Argentines generally are wonderful people. But Argentina under Perón welcomed them with open arms. Sorry. I mean, it still blows my mind just talking about it today.
Is it the Hotel Vienna that has the actual hospital attached to it?
Yeah, it's like
like a little operating center attached to it, kind of.
It's like a first-class hotel, which is a hospital at the same time. I don't think it was used much for the purpose it was meant to be used for. But Hitler definitely was there and had some sort of operation. I don't think plastic surgery. I think probably to repair damage that had been done during the July 1944 bomb plot, where I think he was a lot more wounded than people made him out to be.
Now, when they got to Argentina after the 53 days in the U-boat, were they welcomed by a large party? I mean, did they kind of hang low, or were they just live normal life as a normal person?
From the coast to a ranch outside San Carlos de Bariloche, where they lived for about a year. And then their daughter, Uschi, joins them from Germany. And it seems that Brown was pregnant when she left the bunker in very early stages of pregnancy. And she gives birth to another daughter at some stage that year, probably in the September, October time. The people who were working on the ranch at the time were then told that the family had been killed in a car crash, and they moved on, eventually coming to Inalco, which is the house that I think you guys have seen online, which is where they lived until the Perón coup deposed him, when Perón was deposed in the coup and the Nazis had to hide for the first time in Argentina.
Now, I remember you saying, I think I've read too, and I remember hearing you say that you believe that you have found his children. You think you know where they are, but you're never going to approach them.
I definitely know that one had a long interview with a lawyer in Buenos Aires back in the 80s. She was trying to get divorced from another German man at the time who was beating her up. And she explained to this lawyer that she was Hitler's daughter. It all came out. And this lawyer is not some fruitcake or flake. She's one of the most senior human rights lawyers in Argentina now. I don't see it as our job, really, to go chasing kids. The sins of the fathers are not visited on their children. And people come at me and they go, but you could get DNA from them and all this sort of thing. Well, even if I got DNA from them, there's no existing Hitler DNA, although he does have some cousins on the island of Manhattan, who the Americans took there at the end of World War II and allowed to live out their lives. But they're the only blood relatives. We'd have to go and dig up his sister's grave or something at Berchtesgaden to get DNA. So, I don't see it as our job to chase children.
No good could come of outing those people as his children. No good could come of it.
That's how I feel. None.
But it's one of those things that now that's kind of where I was going. I'm glad you told that story. Is you now have a tie to the back end where you've tied that up. So not only do you know that's who you thought it was, but then they've also kind of confessed to a very good source to where okay, yeah, then I've been on the right track this whole time.
Yes, but there are lots of other pieces of information. I mean, this has been one huge jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes really difficult to connect one thing with another. And so, one of my friends in America got it right. He said it's like chasing down a wounded animal. I don't hunt, but I know lots of people in Texas do.
Yes, we both do.
Right. So, you shoot an animal and it's wounded, so you go after it because you want to finish it. But you don't always have a blood trail to follow. You can see where it was, and then you can see where you find it again, but you can't always find the tracks in between. And this story's been a lot like that.
It seems like the book is consuming. So I can only imagine the work it took to put it together. It pulled you in. And it's funny, like you told at the beginning of the show, is you started it as almost like a joke to yourself, a laugh to yourself, as I'm going to do a little something a little quirky, a little fun. And you never realized that when you opened that door that it would just pour out on you like it did.
You had no idea how many times, guys, I have sat down and thought, should I have started this? It's been costly, not just financially, but it's been costly. And in a sense of, I now don't believe everything I used to believe.
Yeah.
Which at 54 is something, quite a lot of it's been shaken to the roots. And I often say when I'm interviewed, if my father knew about this, who was a combat soldier during World War II, fought all the way through North Africa, up through Italy, wounded 3 times, in Belgium at VE Day. If my father knew about this, he'd be getting out his rifle.
Yeah, it's probably best he doesn't know.
Really, he was a lovely man, but he would be looking for people to kill.
Well, that's why both of my grandparents both of my grandfathers were in the war, as Kyle's.
Yeah, mine too.
And one of my grandfathers was at Normandy and all that stuff. And I know that, he passed away when he was 88 years old, but he to his last days was apple pie and the American flag, and that's the way this was. And if he would have known all this, he'd have probably been right there with your father driving the car. It's just how it would have gone down.
Almost definitely. As long as it wasn't one made by the Ford Motor Company of America.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true, yeah.
It makes me wonder. My grandfather never owned a Ford, so
my grandfather did. I don't think he knew. I definitely know he didn't know that more than 30,000 Nazis just immigrated to Argentina.
Yeah, close to 100,000 Nazis just said, we're going to move down here now.
Yeah, and you have to remember that they couldn't have done it without some help from Americans.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
a lot of them came in from the Russian zone and were filtered through, and they were all supposed to be checked for their Nazi credentials. Not a lot of that seems to have gone on. Well, a great deal of it doesn't seem to have gone on. It's scandalous in the real world. It's scandalous, and the fact that it was the Vatican who helped them do it.
Yeah.
Under Pope Pius. I'm not a Catholic anymore. This isn't the reason I'm not a Catholic anymore. I'm not a Catholic anymore for lots of reasons. But, the idea that the Vatican, who I was always brought up to believe was a decent Christian, ancient thing, but at that time it wasn't. At that time it just saw these people as They'd killed millions of Jews, which at that time in the Vatican was okay because Jews were known as Christ killers. They'd fought against the godless communists. In some ways, they were heroes.
Oh, man. I mean, and like there's a picture in the book of the monster. I mean, incredible monster, Dr. Mengele, just sitting there having a nice dinner in some cafe. I mean, the fact that he was able to get away and live the rest of his days.
But Mengele, as foul a creature as he was terribly minor in what had really gone on. I mean, when you're talking about people like von Albensleben, who managed to become the fisheries minister in Argentina after the war, SS general responsible for the deaths of at least 15,000 people in the invasion of Poland in 1939. Then you talk about Gestapo Müller. You talk about various concentration camp guys that got away. Mengele is a really minor character. We let so many of them get away.
And we're not talking like lived out their days in prison. We're talking about lived out their days very well.
Really comfortably.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
back in Germany, back in their lovely houses. I mean, it's again one of those incredibly crazy things you find out that Germany, West Germany, gave pensions to people who'd served in their armed forces during World War II. My dad never got a penny, and don't think either of yours probably did either.
No.
But if you'd been SS, your pension was 30% more.
The idea of all that group of sitting around, of the men that got away with it, went down, maybe even came back like we're discussing, and sitting around and having a beer and laughing and talking about the good old days makes me so mad. I can't even hardly stand it.
And me. It's
I can't. It's like one of those things you wish you could. I almost wish I could forget. I'm like, I don't want to think of that.
Yeah,
I want to
feel
think
like
they suffered.
quite a lot the same way. I mean, I've been writing quite a lot of World War II fiction recently, and I use it as, well, I think I'm using it as therapy because in my books I get to kill Germans. Well,
Yeah.
not Germans, I get to kill Nazis.
The Nazis.
There's a big difference between Germans and Nazis nowadays.
Well, we've got several German friends. I don't
Yeah.
have any Nazi friends, not that I know of.
Yeah, I tend not to mix with a right-wing community.
Exactly.
In shape or form.
Now, Gerrard, you said you were working on a second book.
We are, yeah. Simon and I work in a book called The Spider's Web, which details a lot more of what happened after the war and what happened to the money, and how people like John J. McCloy and Alan Dulles and Eleanor Dulles were heavily involved with the reintegration of the Nazis into the world's banking and industrial community in many ways, but also into running Germany post-war.
Gerrard, I'd like to say, I mean, I've loved the book, but I also would like to tell, because I know he's not here, I would like to tell Simon thanks. I think he did an amazing job with the military history. I mean, he was, I mean, everybody goes to you, I know, and we're interviewing you and all that stuff, but Simon Dunstan did an amazing job with the military history in this book.
Completely. It wouldn't be Grey Wolf without Simon.
And I can't wait to...
Yeah, I like the stories about the plunder, you know, like all the stuff that they stole, all the artifacts, the artwork.
the build-up.
You will have seen in the news recently that some of it's turning up again.
That's amazing.
Yeah, what is that about? Is it just they're just now finding it, or they're just now deciding they're going to talk about it?
I think they found it about 3 years ago, but they're now deciding they'll talk about it. And, of course, none of it will be restituted or given back to the people it was stolen from.
No, we can't do that.
So little of it has been. And there's still over a third of what they stole missing.
When do you think your second book will be out?
As soon as I can get a publisher to take it on.
I got you.
I mean, we're quite far into it, but it's a difficult subject for some people to take on. And, our publishers, Grey Wolf, Sterling, the editorial team were keen, but the legal team were worried that we were going to offend too many people. And I'm afraid if it offends people, that's just the way it is, because the truth isn't always palatable. It's not always nice and easy to chew. Sometimes it's extremely difficult, leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth, and this story does.
So they're afraid that your new book is going to offend someone.
The last book, I hope, offended quite a lot of people of the wrong sort. But this one goes into much further detail on American corporate involvement and the Vatican's involvement.
Well, it needs to offend people in the right way. They need to know these things.
I agree.
Before you just walk into it going, oh, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I mean, Kyle and I had always discussed the Ford Motor Company was one of the only vehicle companies in America that didn't take the big bailout money. And everybody was always touting that, oh, they didn't take the bailout money. They decided to do it on their own. They didn't take the bailout money, but they
They were
also
funded
helped
by the Nazis.
They also helped kill a lot of American guys back in the war.
Yeah, and the profits from that German operation pretty much ended up back in Motor City. So, it's, not a good thing. Not a good thing.
Now you have a film, too. Is that correct?
Yes, we have a drama documentary which is out in the UK in March, and I hope will be out in the US, sometime March, April. It's already out in Australia and New Zealand, and that's a dramatization of the events following Hitler's escape to Argentina and his death in 1962, and quite a lot of the things that happened after that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, now, where can people find your book?
Grey Wolf's available on Amazon. It should still be available in Barnes & Noble stores, and I hope any good bookshop.
Now, do you have a website that people can go to kind of keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, people can go to greywolfmedia.com, and they can find us there. They can message me from there as well. I'm also on Facebook as myself, Gerrard Williams, and as long as the queries aren't too silly, I'm perfectly happy to get a conversation with people on most topics. Most topics concerning Grey Wolf anyway. We're out there. We're not difficult to find.
Now, Gerrard, is this what you work on now? It seems like all the time?
As I said, I'm writing some fiction at the moment, set in World War II, and so I'm working on that. We're also working on developing a major movie based on the Grey Wolf and the Spider's Web, which we're talking to various people about at the moment. So we'll see how that goes. And in my spare time, I look after my dog and write poetry.
That's awesome. Now, real quick, I just wanted to ask you, because I've been thinking about this the whole time, and I'm sure people are going to want to know. You've never been approached anything of, like, being warned about anything since you started any of this, have you?
I haven't, no. A number of our witnesses have been threatened with death.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and that was one of the things, I think, quite early on in the research of this story when people started to get scared. I mean, these are people in their 70s and 80s who were being told that if they didn't shut up, their house would be burned down, their children would be killed. It was then that I thought, well, if they're lying, who would do this?
I think you had one of the greatest quotes I'd ever heard on an interview was you said that the flak is always heaviest right over the target.
Yeah.
And it seems that way with all of these strange stories of anything that people go to researching, is when you start getting the most notice and the most feedback and the most resistance is when you're the closest to exactly what's going on.
Yes. And, that just makes somebody of my training and background even more determined to carry on.
You just go after them like a pit bull then.
Yeah, well, hey, that's... my problem is that this is a story that really needs telling. It's not a version of the truth. We've been told a version of the truth, but that was lies, and this isn't.
Do you think it's the freedom of information that's doing this more and more now? The fact that people can go on Amazon and readily get your book delivered to their home, or that they can find your interviews on YouTube? Because Kyle and I deal with a lot of interviews with a lot of pre-Columbian historians and a lot more ancient history historians of older cultures. It seems like it was almost done the same way as this is the dogma, this is the box that they put it in. And if you think outside this box, you're crazy, or you're just making up things. But it seems like now with the freedom of information, does it almost feel like there's a swing to where more people are looking into this?
I think that having the internet's a double-edged sword, because sometimes it will lead you to places where you find what is supposed to be information, which seriously isn't information. It's just somebody sitting in their bedroom writing rubbish. But it does enable you to broaden your research a huge amount. And people will put up obscure little documents up there from specialists, which you might come across, which will add another part of the story to you. For instance, we found an operation that was doing Enigma decrypts, the Enigma coding machine from World War II. Mm-hmm. And one of the decrypts was about the murder of the head of the Abwehr. Canaris, Admiral Canaris. And they decrypted an Enigma transmission to Muller, Gestapo Muller, saying that his orders had been carried out to execute Canaris. Well, we didn't know that Muller had ordered directly and personally the execution of Canaris. But of course, Canaris was one of the few people who actually knew about the Argentine operation. And so he needed to be got out of the way. And But we found this on some obscure computer geek site that was, they were trying to decode Enigma messages.
And you found the one you needed.
Yeah, well, we found a lot of other things as well, which were massively unnecessary. You would not believe how many dead ends we've driven down.
Wow. Well, don't get off the line, Gerrard. We were going to talk to you when we get back. But thanks again for coming on the show. It's an amazing book. I beg everybody to go out and buy it.
When you get your other book written, we want you to come back on and discuss
we'll promote
it.
anything.
That'll be my pleasure, guys.
I'm dropping the flow. What is going on? I hope y'all enjoyed that because I had a hell of a time talking to Gerrard. We had a blast, man. He is such a great guy.
Yeah, that was really cool, right?
He's like an encyclopedia. Open up, I'm like, all right, man, start me off right here.
It really is fascinating, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole fact that Hitler got away.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes against everything you ever taught.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if my grandfather was alive, I mean, he'd be rolling over, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I like also, too, you know, like what we discussed with Gerrard even in the interview and off air, too, was a lot of people have come after him and it's not like attacking him, but have come after him and like, well, what about his children? What about his, you know, let's do this. And he's just like, man, it's not their fault. You can't make the son pay for the sins of the father.
That's right.
You know, and a lot of people say, yeah, they want this, that, and the other. I'm kind of with him. It's just leave him alone. You know, I mean, I wouldn't want to know that about my father. I wouldn't want to be at this age now. I know my grandfather was Adolf Hitler. I would not want to know that.
I can't imagine that.
You know what I mean? That's something that it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that somebody in their life, I mean, I'm sure you had plenty of folks in your life, in your family that made mistakes. I know I have, so I don't want to be held responsible for them.
I mean, it's almost like the United States cut a deal.
They did.
For scientists.
They did. I mean, they flat out, that's what happened. I mean, that is what happened. There's no other way to explain it. They couldn't have done it alone. They had to have a little help. It's kind of like all these conspiracy things. They had to have enough help. Maybe not a lot. And it's like what you and I had discussed. The way I feel, and I know the way you feel too, is back then, there wasn't the freedom of information that we have now. Back then, there wasn't. No, there wasn't. And also, too, we kind of touched on something, was it seems like society now is more likely to question things.
We're more aware.
Well, and look at what we're doing here. We're questioning things already. And it seems like even back in our grandparents' times, and you know, we're talking about our grandfathers would have been, I mean, were they 18 or 19 whenever they went to war?
Yeah, most of them.
They weren't taught to question. They were taught that you
fall in line.
Well, and it was you respect your elders. You don't question what they tell you, and you definitely do not question the police. You don't question the military. So if they were told,
it does seem like that it was almost the greatest generation, though, right?
Yeah, but was it the greatest generation?
I don't know.
Or was it the ones that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways that you can weigh that. I mean, that's a big statement, but it's one of those things that it seems like they were more easily fooled, not because they weren't intelligent. It was because of the way they were raised. Whereas we were raised to question. We were raised to think differently and not stick to. And you know what that comes from? That comes from our parents. That comes from the baby boomers and coming from the 60s. Yeah, whenever that's kind of where that came from, because that's when the big shakeup kind of started. You know, and it's kind of progressed until now.
Yeah, a lot of the old school ideas, died,
really got shook up. But I think it was easier. It almost seems like it would have been easier to fool the masses in the 40s, maybe more so than now. Because look how much faster information travels. I mean, if they were to go in and look, I mean, look how quick when they found Saddam Hussein. Look how quick that was on the news.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was all over when they drug him out of that pipe or whatever. They found him.
I mean, you could watch it on TV.
So I think that if they would have not found Hitler, when they found the bunker today, they'd have been, somebody would have tweeted, "Huh, guess what? We just kicked in the door and there's some dead bodies, but they're not Hitler's."
Right.
I mean, people would have instantly been like, "Well, where the hell did he go?" Yeah. You know, the search continues. Whereas there, they could have been like, "Hey, they're burned beyond recognition."
Just slip out.
That's right.
That's it.
They pull up a Kaiser Soze and they vanish in the wind.
That's what it seems like,
Yeah.
right? It's crazy.
And he's got so much stuff in his book, him and Simon, so many facts and so much references to where they cover you can't hardly argue with it. I mean, it's a lot of that stuff that it makes more sense than
one of the things I was
story.
blown away was just Simon Dunstan's version of like how much plunder
Oh my
the
goodness.
Nazis did. I mean, how much artwork, antiquities,
Things they
like
took.
this. I mean, they basically ravaged the earth like a plague, and they would take everything from everybody. I mean, antiques from every home they took over. They were pulling gold teeth out of people's mouths.
They were like the modern
They
day.
took everything.
At the time, the modern day horde of Genghis Khan. That was what they were like.
That's the closest
when
thing
they
you could,
rolled through there.
That's the closest thing you could.
They took it
parallel
all.
it with. Yep.
They left nothing. If you stood opposed, you were killed.
Yeah.
And I guess what they didn't, when they were done with it, they could just burn it down. It was just an actual modern raiding party at that time.
And I was not aware until this book that Ford Motor Company was providing
And IBM.
vehicles.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, man,
the Nazis.
really? Yeah. The book, the whole, I mean, it was.
IBM, ITT, they were doing the calculations on everybody at Dachau and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, too, like we said, folks. I mean, Kyle and I are big history nuts. And it's not just conspiracy theory history it's all kinds of history. I mean, we listen to.
It is the history, though.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't just follow crazy or histories or things like that. I mean, it's just, we follow history, period. Of just
think
all
it's
kinds
important.
of history. I think it is, too. And it's something that I feel like I can sink my teeth into.
Because just like we always talk about the ancient civilizations, I mean, people are the same. They always are.
Yeah.
And so the same things can happen over and over and over again.
You've got smart people and you've got dumb people in any civilization at any point in time. It's proven. I mean, I'm sure you had a guy that probably couldn't walk and chew gum, and then you had Socrates at the same time. So,
Yep.
I mean, it's the same thing as what's going on today. You've got people that are deadbeats that just want to just live off the government, and then you've got people that are up at the top trying to just do everything that they can and get forth all the information they can, and it happened back then, it happens now. We need to realize that. We need to realize that, that just our surroundings change, but people do not.
The book is Grey Wolf. It's called The Escape of Adolf Hitler.
Yes.
I suggest you buy it. It's a great book.
I would like to tell everybody right quick. Sterling Publishing. That's who it is.
Yep. You can get it on
Sterling.
Amazon.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
about
we're going to have
14,
links.
15 bucks.
We'll put links of it up on the show.
Yep.
All that stuff. You'll be able to find it on the website and the whole deal. Yeah, go on there. Some serious folks. If you enjoy anything that has to do with conspiracy and history, do yourself a favor.
This is one of the biggest conspiracies, really.
Yeah, it really is. And speaking of that, we're going to do a conspiracy theory episode, I think, the next episode.
Is it the next episode?
Yeah, yeah. Because the reason we're going to do that is because we spoke to Mr. Eddie Bravo of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and he is huge into conspiracy. That's the thing that he loves the most. And in fact, in the interview, we even told him about this book. So I have sent him some emails and things like that about it. But we're going to do us a little conspiracy, and then we're going to talk to Eddie for a little bit. It wasn't a super long interview, with Eddie, but it was enough that we could really talk and chat
He
it
had
up
to
with
fit
him.
us in. I mean, he really did take time to fit
Super
us in.
busy guy.
But it was neat to talk to him. He's a big hero of mine.
Yeah. And so we'll explain more about that too whenever we get into that. But yeah, we're going to do some conspiracy stuff. I've got a few ideas of things I'd like to talk about. Like I said, I'm not a conspiracy, big into it kind of conspiracy guy, but there's a few things that fascinate me that I'm definitely going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Well, that's all I got, man.
That's all I got, man.
I guess we will wrap this puppy up and we will catch y'all again on the conspiracy little episode. But we are really glad y'all stuck it out. We're really glad y'all are here with us and you enjoy what we're
visit
doing.
the website, expandedperspectives.com. Yeah. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Twitter.
Yep.
Tell your friends.
I would love to tell you to go back to Instagram, but I have completely forgot the password. I'm going to have to find it. I was looking, I was like, I'm going to get on the Instagram and post some stuff on that, and I'm an idiot. And so I start trying to punch in every password I could think of, and no.
Nothing.
So I'm going to have to go back through the
Maybe
whole
somebody
thing and
hacked
get
your
it sent.
stuff.
What do they got, like 6 pictures? I'm an idiot. I mean, I'm so dumb. So yeah, I'll try to get it figured out. Maybe I'll throw some crazy Instagram photos because I need to get it figured out before we go to the Weird Text Fest and all that stuff. So
And we got
'cause I
some
like to post
crypto
some
stuff
pictures
coming
there.
up, too.
Yeah, we're going to do the crypto stuff. We've got a bunch of really cool stuff in the works. We got some paranormal stuff coming up. So, I mean, we've got some really interesting things. So stay tuned, folks, because it's going to only get better, we promise.
That's right. So stay tuned. This is Expanded Perspectives.
Peace.
Welcome to the next level.